There's the pass to Leitner. Puts it up. Yes!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Camera Chronicles. I'm your host, Max Rego. We are coming to you live from the Chronicle office. Right in front of me, we have Alex Jackson, our sports features editor and fellow men's basketball beat. And to my left, we have Sasha Richie, our head Blue Zone editor, and it's actually her first time on the show. So, Alex, thanks for hopping on again, and Sasha, thanks for joining the show for the first time.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Max.
Yeah. No, thanks for coming, guys. So, obviously, we're coming to you on a Sunday night. Duke went 1-1 this week. An overtime loss to Florida State on Tuesday, and then a win yesterday over Syracuse by 20. Really impressive performance at home. Good bounce back game for the Blue Devils. We'll get to those two games in a bit. But we got to get to some listener questions. So we asked from our Duke basketball account this morning. Send in any questions you have about this week or the Trevor Keels injury or really anything else concerning Duke. We said we'd answer a few, so we got a couple, and let's get right into them. So, at Torg_Y asks, how long will Trevor be out for? That's Trevor Keels, obviously. So, Keels suffered an injury, a leg injury on Tuesday night against Florida State in the second half. Duke went roughly half the second half and all of overtime without him. Ended up actually getting it into overtime after being down by 9, but he was, in pain on the court. It looked really serious at first. A lot of people were saying it was a knee. Coach K said in the postgame it was not a knee. It's a calf injury. He was ruled doubtful on Friday afternoon for the game against Syracuse Saturday, and then ruled out the morning of the game because it was a noon game. So they ruled that early. So obviously it's unsure whether he'll be back for Clemson. I think that probably the safe bet is he probably will not be back for Clemson. But Alex, what are your thoughts on the injury, how it impacts Duke, and when maybe will be the next time we'll see Trevor Keels?
Yeah, I think the doubtful indication is really a good sign for Keels in the program. If Duke, based on the medical staff, their knowledge, if it was a significant injury, they would have gone straight to out, and they would have known that right away. The fact that they went to doubtful but still tested him and see if he was ready the morning of is a good sign that he could work his way back sooner than most people think, especially after the way the injury looked on the court. But I think that what the last game showed was that Duke doesn't really need Keels to win. He makes them a significantly better team, and they're better off without it. They're better off with him, but they have incredible depth, and just being able to win those games even without their starting point guard makes them just a strong team. So I think that the Clemson's not a significantly better team than Syracuse was this week. So I think they'll be okay without him on Tuesday, but going forward, you'd like to have him back. I think he'll be back sooner rather than later.
Well, their performance yesterday, again, like you said, I don't think they're better. They're definitely not better without Trevor Keels. What he brings defensively and how he can handle the ball and take some of the load off Wendell and Jeremy. He brings a lot to the table. I know he's not the most efficient player. He's shooting about around 40 from the field and 30 from 3. Those could definitely improve. He probably wants to get that up to 45 and 35 if Duke really wants to make a push come March. But, looking here at the stats, Duke made 14 threes, shot 48% from the field, 38 from 3. Out-rebounded Syracuse by 10. So they still, in his absence, they picked up the slack for their guy. Sasha, what are your thoughts on his injury and what it means for Duke?
Yeah, like Alex and Max said, Duke is fine without him. I thought one of the interesting things was to see Jeremy Roach step back into the starting lineup after AJ sort of, took his job. But, and Roach did pretty well, put up 9 assists, was helping drive the offense. What was interesting is to watch how Duke adjusted to Keels out of the lineup, because Keels has a very particular way of playing. He's high energy, he moves a lot, and so not having that, it's how do you adjust to that? How are you changing the way you're driving to the basket? And they were able to do that. They were able to fill in that gap and get it done.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you guys said. The point on Roach is an interesting one, because in the 2 games, obviously Keels was not out for the whole Florida State game, but in the last 2 games, Roach's assisted turnover ratio is 15-2. and that's coming from a bench role. Saturday obviously was starting, but it started with a bench role against Florida State. So, yeah, I think I was a little concerned or maybe questioning the decision to move AJ Griffin to the starting lineup. Nothing having to do with Griffin, but I think you need that scoring punch off the bench. I still do, but I think if Roach can just be a distributor off the bench and really help the second unit and still play, he still plays with the starters. Even once Keels returns, I'm assuming he'll step right back into the starting lineup. I think Roach is building that confidence. He's only shooting 38% from the field. He's obviously not a scorer. He does a lot more. He's become a much better defender this year, in my opinion. But yeah, he's growing into his own, and I think he's growing into the point guard when more is off the court that this team really needs. And I think his performance, I think he was one of the big reasons why, besides Paolo, why Duke even got to overtime against Florida State. I thought it was terrific against Florida State down the stretch. So, all right, well, that's first question. But next one comes from at Sauce KUN. I literally don't know how to pronounce this, but got a pretty young group. What did Coach K say to get them to put the FSU game behind them? This is actually interesting. So Brandon Marks from The Athletic wrote an article on Wendell Moore after yesterday's game, and he talked about how Coach K and Wendell had some conversations, being the captain, along with Joey Baker, being the leader of the team, being the leader of the starting lineup, basically, and just had some comments and some talks about how to get Moore back into the shape and the condition and back into the way he was playing before their COVID pause. He was one of the best, really the best. I mean, he was the best player in the ACC.
He was one of the best players in college basketball.
I agree. And he just wasn't quite that guy the last couple games. His shooting from three was down. He was turning the ball over at a higher rate. But against Syracuse, he stepped it up. 15 points, 8 assists, 6 rebounds, I believe. And he really controlled the game, controlled that zone. Zook moved the ball really well against the zone. They broke it consistently. They didn't just rely on over-dribbling and trying to get it inside. They really, Wendell did a great job of attacking that zone with passing. But, that was one of the things I think Coach K has the leadership on this team to rely on during tough moments of the season. We saw that against Miami. We saw that against Ohio State earlier in the year when after that loss, Coach K talked about it, how it's an energy cycle. And I think, the season, moves on in waves. And I think that was probably one of the things that this team has had to focus on is it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. They still have the majority of their ACC schedule ahead of them, right? So, and if you look at it right now, they're 5-2 in ACC play. They're right up there with Florida State and Miami for jostling for the top spot in the conference. But I really think that this team just needs to rebuild that consistency that they had before. I mean, the game, the performance that they had in the second half against Virginia Tech, if you look at that, the way they played in those last 20 minutes with Paolo at the 5, that's almost the best you've seen Duke play all year outside of Kentucky and Gonzaga. I just think it's a question of just regaining that composure and that consistency that they had against some big time teams in November and getting back to that. So, any thoughts from you guys?
Yeah, I mean, what stood out to me about Florida State was, no one of their players jumps out as a star, kind of the way that Duke teams have had stars in the past. But Florida State was firing on all cylinders, working together, and as young of a team as Duke is, they have struggled, in my opinion, with gelling and getting that chemistry just because, a lot of their starting lineup and a lot of the guys getting big minutes don't have that collegiate experience. So being able to take that to overtime was already a huge feat for them, in my opinion. And I think as the season progresses, you'll see that inconsistency weeded out as they get more experience under their belt.
I'll just add one thing that I feel like this might be a bit of a hot take. I feel like experience is a bit overhyped.
Oh,
people
no.
people act like youth is the ultimate Achilles heel. And I will admit, for this Duke team that is loaded with talent, youth is one of their big issues. But it's not like that because they're young, they're automatically at a disadvantage. They have talent, and not only talent, they have leaders, not just from their older guys like Wendell Moore and Joey Baker. They have leadership from their young guys like Paolo and Trevor. And Coach K has spoken on that before, just the natural leadership he's gotten out of his freshmen. So even when one guy might not be producing one night, there's always someone to step up and really just be the force behind the team, lead the team. So I think that in the long run, as guys get more comfortable, as players fill into their shoes more, I really think that the inexperience, the quote-unquote inexperience, will just become less and less of a factor, and Duke will start to settle down more.
Well, I think it needs to be a mix. People will compare every Duke team, recent team at least, to the 2018-19 team, Zion, RJ, Cam, Trey. It's a natural comparison. I actually think this team does remind me, and whether they end up winning a national title, we'll see. But I think it does remind me in a way of the 2015 team. If you look at that team, if you look at the way it was built, they had a dominant big man who's going to be a top 3 pick in the draft, right? Paolo, Jahlil Okafor. You have a guy in Wendell Moore, who finally makes a leap as an upperclassman and gets to the point where he's an all-ACC player. That's Quinn Cook, basically. They're very similar, distributors. They can play the point.
They can shoot it.
Yeah, exactly. Quinn Cook's a better shooter. Wendell's a better defender. Yeah. But it's the same, the same prototype, if you will. Then you have guys like Trevor Keels. He's kind of like the Tyus Jones, if you want to say that. Just a scoring guard. He's obviously a lot bigger than Tyus Jones, but Trevor Keels, AJ Griffin, the two supporting freshmen, right? They're basically Tyus Jones, Justice Winslow in a way. I mean, AJ Griffin kind of reminds me of a righty Justice Winslow in a lot of ways. A much better shooter, but his athleticism is, he can put it on the floor. They're similar in a way. But I just think the way this team is built, it has the right mix of youth and experience that you need in college basketball. If you look at the teams that have won in recent years, Baylor, Gonzaga, from last year. I mean, Gonzaga had the perfect mix of some really great one-and-done talent, and they have it again this year, where you blend the two, and the chemistry, it works, it clicks, and I think that's what this team has. I'm not ready. I don't think they're at all one of the top 3 favorites right now. I would say definitely Baylor, Gonzaga, and Auburn. I think Auburn right now has to be the favorite, the way they've played, beating Kentucky yesterday. But they're not in those. They're not in that class, but they're right behind, I think, that category of teams. And it's kind of similar, right, to how the 2015 team operated, right? Kentucky the whole year was, are they going to be undefeated? They're going to be the greatest team of all time. They have all these draft picks, Carl Towns, Devin Booker, Tyler Ulis, etc. And Duke just kind of, they got knocked out by Wisconsin, then Duke just kind of, was flying under for Duke's status, for Duke's reputation, they were flying under the radar, and they ended up winning the title. So I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying the way this team is built, I think, is similar with the shooting, the defense, the freshmen, and the experience that they have.
And not to mention that both teams' second loss of the season was to Miami at home. So
that's
weird
true.
Coincidence.
That's true.
The only reason that I bring up youth so much with this team is that we are in unprecedented times. With COVID-19 sort of shutting everything down in 2020, that season opener against Kentucky was the first high-level basketball some of these guys had played in over a year. Paulo sat out his senior high school season. So that's why, I think we're seeing a longer period of them having to rev up and gel than maybe you'd expect from such a what's the word? Highly regarded team coming in.
Team with high expectations.
Team high expectations,
right.
Yes.
That's a fair point. Yeah, I think again, you have to look at the season in totality, and I know they've lost a couple games recently, but I do think I like the way this team is constructed, and they're going to go through their losses because they, a lot of some ACC teams match up a little better with them than others, but I still am confident in this team's ability. Alex, we recorded a video Friday about whether Duke can get a 1 seed. I still think they can. I think there's a less than 50% chance, but because of the team,
I think there's a less than 5% chance.
Okay, well, there you go. Yeah. So, by the way, if you're listening to this, watch our video. check out the YouTube channel. But yeah, so I think it's possible to get a 1 seed. It's still possible they would have to win the ACC, obviously, and basically win out. I think they could lose. I think they have a margin for error of one game.
They would need to. We're not going to re-debate this right now, but they would need to win out plus help. So that's just my.
That's a fair point. It's a fair point. Yeah. So we actually got one more question from @JCWatts22. What's the symbolism of the baby doll? It's been around for years. So for context, this is in the student section at every home game. One of the line monitors wears a plastic baby attached to their body, and it's just a passed down thing. It's a tradition, so I don't think there's that much to it. But I just thought that was a funny.
Just a prop, nothing symbolic about it.
Yeah.
Just dress something up like that.
Of the three, I just thought it was funny. Of the three questions we got, one of them was that one. So it was just funny. So obviously we talked a little bit about Trevor Keels. We talked a little bit about what his injury means, and we got some listener questions. So thanks everyone for sending those in. But I kind of wanted to shift a little gears here because we have a big enough sample size, right, where we can really evaluate this team's rotation. This podcast in the past with Derek and Shane always talked rotation. I feel like we haven't done it as much this year, but I think we have enough to really talk about it. So I'm looking now. Our dear friend Ken Pomeroy. His website is literally the GOAT. Duke's most frequent lineups over the past 5 games, and obviously it is the current starting lineup that includes Trevor Keels. Mm-hmm. The second one is the starting lineup for Syracuse, so Roach, Moore, Griffin, Banchero, Williams. Third is Roach, Keels, Moore, Banchero, Williams, so the original starting lineup. So basically all the 3 combinations of starting lineups that they've had this year.
Okay.
One thing I thought was interesting, Wendell Moore is part of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of the 10 most common lineups.
And Paolo? How many?
Paolo is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that shows you who the 2 most important players are.
You can see that.
So, and then the 4th lineup, which I think is interesting, is a lineup with Paolo at the 5 and Roach, Keels, Moore, and Griffin. So how should that lineup be played a little more?
Here's what I struggle with. I know Coach K has been experimenting with how to use Theo John all season and the right combination between how much to play Mark Williams and when to take him out and put John in. So but then you would add that third kind of combination in where you have Paolo at the 5. Now that becomes a little bit more complicated, and obviously you want your best players on the floor all the time. It's really hard to say when they should be doing what, because you get a little bit of a different look from each lineup, right? So I think that it's going to take a little bit more experience now that we're seeing more of this Paolo at the 5. Really, that was a revelation only a few games ago, it feels like. So I don't know. I really don't know where Coach K will end up by the end of the season in terms of lineup rotation minutes. But I think that the original lineup, the number 1 we see all the time, is probably their most effective. And unfortunately, I think that unfortunately for Theo John, I think that the Paolo at the 5 lineup brings the most change of pace for them. So I don't really know how Theo John then fits in. What do you guys think?
I think Theo John brings a lot when he comes off the bench. I like Paolo at the 4 and having a true center. I think one of the things that I think that Duke needs to do more of is flex its size advantage. When they have their main starting lineup out there, that's a big team, and I don't think they're taking advantage enough of that. You see that with how they're getting out-rebounded. And so I think when you rotate Theo John in, what he brings is just energy at the glass. He's always going up. He's going for the blocks. He's going for rebounds. And Mark does that too, but Theo John just has a strength to him that I think can really energize the team in that respect when they struggle.
Right. Yeah, I mean, one thing obviously that's pretty clear is they'll never play Theo and Mark Williams together. Paolo and Theo is a combination that is the 6th and 7th and 9th most common lineups. So I think they like the way that Paolo can stretch the floor and be kind of that point forward versus Theo who has good hands, good size, and a good frame. Has good footwork. He can operate in a low block. One thing that I also thought was interesting is Joey Baker. Of the four most common lineups that he is a part of, the three most common lineups that he is a part of, he's playing with Paolo. I just think that's interesting because I think that makes a lot of sense because, like, when Paolo drives, he's going to get all the attention in the world, and they've been giving it to him with the left elbow on the perimeter and just letting him attack, letting him go to work. And when the double comes, whether it's from weak or strong side, there's going to be someone open in the corner probably, because just from where they're doubling from. And oftentimes that's Joey Baker. He loves that left corner. He loves the left wing. Those I think are his two favorite spots. So that makes a lot of sense. They try and you got to find for Paolo, if you're going to have him operate as almost a point forward, which they've been experimenting with. Coach K talked about it last week, I believe, how they want it in his media conference, how he wanted to experiment with that. But I think that makes a lot of sense you have to surround Paolo with shooters. Joey Baker and AJ Griffin are the two best shooters on this team. So I think Paolo, having those two guys around him, makes a lot of sense.
And no disrespect to Joey, but he's a bit of a one-dimensional player, doesn't really have much of a dribble drive game. So for him to work with Paolo like that is probably why he's been able to see the floor more this season and succeed more this season than he has in past years, just because he can really just play what his game works best to, which is just getting that catch and shoot ball. So as you mentioned, Paolo drives, kick out, and Joey's there.
The nice thing about Joey this season is that he does exactly what he's asked, and he's doing it well. Like he's shooting 40% from three. He's defending well, and so you can't ask much more of him from that. But he's doing it. But what I thought was interesting is you can also see how much confidence he's gained since previous seasons. You see it when he's out there with starters, but you also see it in garbage minutes against Syracuse when he's kind of leading the court.
Taking off for a dunk.
Yeah.
He's definitely had a dunk in his Duke career off the top of my head.
Never like that.
Yeah.
Not like that one.
No.
That was, I wasn't in Cameron, but I imagine it went nuts.
It did. Keep going, Sasha.
Oh, yeah. Just seeing how he's gained confidence, I think that's why he's been able to step into his role so admirably. You don't necessarily want him to start. You've got guys who are just all around better players, but
definitely don't think he should start.
No, definitely not. But when he's coming in off the bench, he's not going to be a liability, and he's going to do what he needs to do.
Yeah. No, I'm looking here, and the stats kind of bear that out. Last year, he regressed significantly. Like he shot nearly 40% from three his sophomore year, and that makes a lot of sense because you had guys like Trey Jones and Vernon Carey who were going to try. Trey would drive and dish. Vernon would get a lot of doubles in the paint, and Baker would get a lot better looks. Last year, Matthew Hurt was obviously operating like a lot of times on the perimeter. Mm-hmm. He wasn't the best passer in the world. DJ Stewart, who was probably I think he had another high usage rating on the team. He also wasn't a great passer, and his frame didn't allow him. You didn't need to give him that much attention.
And he shot the ball a lot from three too.
Yeah, so just like the way the team is constructed, I think gets Baker some more open looks, and plus you replace Stewart with Keels, who is a better pick and roll player, so he can find guys.
Just the spacing last year did not work to Joey's advantage,
exactly.
And this year it's much better fit to the type of player he is. I'd still like to see him make the most of his minutes. I know he's had a much better year this year, but I feel like he has the potential just to be like a killer, that guy that on Iowa or whatever team that you play that you have no idea what his name is, and all of a sudden he's knocking down threes in your face on your favorite team. It's just it like hurts you like to have those guys that aren't the stars kill you. I feel like Joey could be one of those guys, and I'm just waiting for him to come into his own.
Yeah, he's he's definitely improved from last year to this. I mean, it would be hard to not improve at least somewhat, but definitely the way this team's constructed with Paolo being able to attack off the dribble and Moore's improvement as a passer has definitely benefited Baker. Yeah. And just being surrounded by, this team definitely has the most shooting. I think the most shooting Duke has had since 2017-18.
I think even more shooting than before then, because
Maybe,
Cam Reddish wasn't even that good.
I'm not saying that the Zion team, because the Zion team was...
17, 18, 19, 19.
The Zion team was a terrible shooting.
Yeah.
They were in the 300s
yeah.
from three. So, and that's what killed them, ultimately, because you could just pack the paint. And I don't think... You can't pack the paint as much against this team. You can't... I know Syracuse goes zone all the time, but sometimes they switch out of it. And they, for some reason, they never did. You would think they would go... Sometimes they go to 1-3-1, very rarely, but you would think they would try to get it out of Moore and Roach's hands, and they never did, and Duke killed them for that. But I just think it's interesting how, the guys that are being surrounded by... who the superstars are being surrounded with. Paolo Paolo always has Griffin and Baker to kick out to. Moore is always going to have either Keels or Roach just to take some of the pressure defensively. Moore always gets one of the tougher assignments. He guarded Buddy Boeheim, did a great job yesterday. Buddy Boeheim, I think Buddy's very likable. I don't know, his name is Buddy. He's a great shooter. He's like the Duncan Robinson of college basketball, kind of. Just like how he can move without the ball and stuff. But, yeah, he only had, I believe, 2 baskets all game yesterday. And that was a huge part of that was Wendell. Did a great job on him. But just, having other guys to take some of the ball handling load off them, like Keels and Roach, every lineup that Wendell is in, one or two of those guys are in there, so that makes a lot of sense. You can't have Wendell running the whole offense. They don't like to have a true one sole point guard. So I just think it's interesting, and they don't have the most frequent lineup has been used 21.8% of the time. Second most is 16.8. First, obviously, to repeat it, the most frequent lineup is Wendell Moore, Trevor Keels, AJ Griffin, Paolo Banchero, Mark Williams. Who actually we haven't really talked about Mark much, but we can get to him. He had some solid performances this week. And then the second one is Roach, Moore, Griffin, Banchero, Williams. So that's the original. That is the starting lineup next from Syracuse, and then the first is the starting lineup for the last couple games after Griffin got moved into the starting lineup. Starting lineup for Roach. So yeah, I think rotation is always key. 'Cause, we are now 2 weeks out from North Carolina. So, gotta talk that eventually. But it's just good to see. It's interesting and good to see Duke kind of establish its rotation and have its core group of guys and tinkering with lineups and stuff. So, yeah, I think we gotta talk a little bit about the games this week, obviously, but I kind of want to start with Florida State. I feel like we've talked a little bit about Syracuse. We're kind of burying the lead here. That was a funky game, a weird, I thought it was a weirdly officiated game, and by weirdly I mean horrifically. I thought, on both sides. I thought FSU got completely screwed on a couple calls, couple out of bounds calls, and I thought Duke got some bad, the end of some bad whistles. So I really think it was a very poorly officiated game on both sides, but both teams, in overtime. Both teams played really well. I was really impressed with Florida State. They're finally coming into their own. They beat Miami yesterday on the road. They swept Miami, who's Florida State, Miami, and Duke are the 3 best teams in the ACC. I think that's pretty clear. Mm-hmm. And Florida State sweeping Miami and being 3-0 against Miami and Duke, that's impressive. So, what are your guys' thoughts from Tuesday? And how is it concerning that Duke's 2 closest ACC games have both resulted in losses?
I just think that the officiating there's nothing you can do about that. But the Duke lost because of their rebounding. That was a huge issue for them. Mm-hmm. They got killed on the defensive. They let up so many offensive rebounds that you just expect them to be letting up points every defensive possession, which really just like how can your offense keep up with that? And then we were talking about Mark Williams being an excellent shot blocker. Well, the rest of the team has to back him up because this is not Zion anymore. He's not just going to swat the ball and keep it and take the ball out of the air. If the ball's going to go somewhere and the rest of the team has to rebound, they got to box out. I mean, this is a Coach K coach team. You would think that would be like a done deal, like a fundamental aspect of basketball boxing out, going after the ball. But really, it's just been disappointing to see them not have a focus on that, and all four remaining guys going after a rebound. They kind of have two guys go after a rebound and two guys start spreading out and spacing for offense, which I guess if you want to run the floor, it works great, but when you're getting killed on the boards, you really need to rethink how you're approaching this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most telling stat from that game is field goal attempts. I mean, Duke took 55 shots and Florida State took 73.
Exactly.
Florida State didn't even shoot very well. They shot 36% from the field, but when you're shooting that much and you're given that many opportunities, it's like Duke is going to get burned when they let that up. So, and like I said earlier, Florida State is one of those teams where they gel and they work together and they can really make you pay if you don't have any chemistry. So, and against Florida State, Duke just looked a little frenetic, out of sorts. And maybe there's reasons for that. I mean, that's a brutal away atmosphere to be in, so that contributes to some nerves. But if you're not connecting and you're not getting those rebounds, Florida State's going to make you pay.
Yeah, 19 offensive rebounds is a stat I just found. So you're never going to win a game letting up 19 offensive rebounds.
Especially when you only have 7.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
19 offensive rebounds, and when you shoot, I believe it was almost 14 points higher than Florida State from the field. But when you give up 19 offensive rebounds.
And 15 turnovers to Florida State's 5. I mean, the turnovers, just since they've gotten back, it seemed like they had the whole offense under control prior to the COVID outbreak. Wendell Moore has just really just taken a step back in the passing game. I know he's been great this year, and the Syracuse game was encouraging to see. But before that, they were just being careless with the ball, which it's hard to imagine just a team going from so good to so bad. Yeah,
I think the rebounding is an interesting one because I think I was actually talking about this with a friend of mine during the NC State game, and he mentioned to me hey, I know Mark Williams is getting all these blocks, but he kind of just chases the blocks, and he leaves the lane open for an offensive rebound because they just don't have especially if he's the only big on the floor, which isn't that common, but isn't crazy rare. That just leaves an alley for a big on the other team, because if it's a guard that's driving and Mark is coming over, and look, he's averaging 4 blocks in the last 3 games. That's elite stuff, but I do think their help defense still needs to improve. In terms of how many chances does he actually take, but he gets a lot of the credit for getting Duke back into that game because he converted on a couple lobs from Paolo, and I just think that the problem that is gonna rear its head in a lot of these games is their Duke's half court offense. For the first 10 minutes of the second half, it was in complete shambles, just quite frankly.
Not putting the ball in Paolo's hands for 10 minutes.
That was
how?
outrageous.
As a player, Paolo needs to be calling for the ball. He wants to be that number 1 overall pick. You need to prove you're the type of guy that can just take over a game, especially against Florida State's a good team. They're not better than Duke, I don't think. And so,
I agree.
So against an inferior team, that's where you just gotta click in and go. So that was really just frustrating. But they once they put the ball in his hands, they were able to tie the game back up and take it overtime.
Yeah, I appreciate that he's buying into this idea of team offense, But
Oh yeah. Totally.
at the end of the day, you can't not touch the ball
Yeah.
as much as he was in that first stretch of the second half. So you can't, like, if you need to put the ball in his hands, you need to let him show off the incredible skill set that he has, because that incredible skill set is what helps you win games. And that's what we saw as, they clawed their way back to contending to win that game. But because for a while it looked like it was signed, sealed, delivered for Florida State. And so the fact that Paulo was able to get them back was huge, but it shouldn't have come to that point if he'd been touching the ball more.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I noticed from Florida State and from Ohio State, I think there are some similarities there. The way those teams play defense, they really pressure your guards, and they don't let you get into your sets until 18 seconds on the shot clock, 15 seconds on the shot clock. It just delays Duke trying to get into a rhythm and get into its motion offense, and I think that hurts a guy like Trevor Keels and Jeremy Roach and even Wendell Moore, because they just want to get into their actions quicker. They want to play up tempo. They want to get easy baskets, and just having that pressure and just like having to fend off a guy that's on your hip all day long, it wears you out. And don't get me wrong, I still think they should have gotten to Paolo a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's the best. I think he's along with Jabari Smith, I think he's playing like the best freshman in the country right now. I mean, his numbers still from that game: 20 points, 7 assists, 12 rebounds. That's pretty good. He's
Not to mention 4 turnovers.
Well, yeah. Look, guys turn the ball over. He's if he.
That's nearly a third of the team's turnovers.
No, he didn't have a perfect game, but he does not deserve the blame for the Florida State game. Let's put it at that. And I also thought, on the last possession, he should have gotten the ball. That's not a hot take.
Okay, that I'm not gonna say let's not put the ball in the hands of Wendell Moore. Everything we know about him, he's been an excellent shooter and like a guy who can take that shot. So, it's a pressure situation. I get it. You want to put the ball in your hands of your senior guy, but I mean, there's definitely a case to be made for Paolo.
I think Coach K had a timeout left. I know.
Yeah, timeout is the most controversial.
Yeah, I think I understand his logic. He doesn't want to give Florida State the chance to set up their defense, right? I just disagree with the decision.
I disagree with that logic in that your offense hasn't really been going for the whole game, so you need to set up your offense more than they need to set up their defense.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And I think the opportunity to set something up, to take a meaningful shot instead of just trying to find whatever's open, I think that could have helped them in that, because they were struggling offensively for decent stretches of that game. So you don't I wouldn't just bet on your offense clicking in that final second.
I won't tell Coach K how to coach, but I think that was like a learn your team kind of moment. I think in the future, in a situation like that, we could see Coach K actually use the timeout there.
Yeah, I mean a lot of times he doesn't use a timeout late because he doesn't want to give the opposition a chance to set up its defense, which is totally fair. I mean, I definitely, again, I get the logic. I just, I would have been fine with it if they just gave it to Paolo and said, hey, just go the length of the court and you'll have a favorable matchup. You're 6'10", 250. Everything's a favorable matchup for you.
Just draw a foul.
Yeah, go to the rim. He's improved as a finisher.
Yeah. I have one more thing to add to that timeout thing. I think Coach K is one of the best coaches in the country in drawing up inbounds plays.
Yeah.
And so to not use that advantage that you have over everyone, the amount of times Duke has come out of an under the hoop inbounds with just a lob and dunk and no one sees it coming, they have the plays, they have the design to outmatch any other coach. And I just feel like they could have totally used that to their advantage in that game.
Well, you probably would have been, if they were going to take the timeout, have Wendell race it up the court. Yeah, and then it wouldn't have been under the hoop. With 9 seconds, call it, and then you have a side out of bounds and try and get maybe
some kind of
a curl or an elevator screen or something, just to get a guy downhill and whatever. We can talk about that possession that play all day long, but at the end of the day, Duke didn't lose only because of that possession. So we are getting ready to kind of wrap this up. We are at, what are we we at now? Like almost 40 minutes. So almost not quite the record for this year. I think we did one that was like an hour earlier this year. And obviously our holiday compilation. Listen to that if you haven't already, if you're listening to this podcast. But because you don't want to listen to me all day long. So so we're getting ready to wrap. Obviously, we talked a lot about Syracuse, but I just wanted to ask one question, rapid fire. We are approaching, after next week, the midway point of ACC play will basically be here. Will Duke win the ACC? The floor is yours.
When the
regular
ACC
season.
Outright? Yeah.
Outright.
Okay.
No, no escape here. Outright, regular season.
Yeah, I think all the other teams have dropped embarrassing games also. I think Duke will do that maybe one or two more times. I think they can do it.
Well, and I don't even think that Duke has an embarrassing ACC loss. Losing.
I think the Miami at home game was a bit embarrassing.
Miami was on like a 10-game win streak, but that's not embarrassing.
I think in
Miami's
in
a
your
good team.
in your
good.
home court.
The way it ended was surprising.
Yeah.
You're up by 3 or 47. It's surprising.
Right.
I would say it's not an embarrassing loss. It's not a resume breaker. It's not
It's not a resume breaker. It's a game they should have won and didn't.
I agree.
That's my point. That's my point.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. I'll give it to you. Give that to you.
Yeah.
I think Duke will win the ACC outright because I think their talent is just above the rest, and I think they'll rise to the top. And I think you'll see, other teams in contention like Florida State, Miami, if Wake Forest. I think they'll have to beat out each other, and I think you'll start to see, pick up one loss and one win against, So I think at the end of the day, Duke will finish on top.
I think I'm going to say yes, not to sound like we're all homers, but I just think that not every team has at least 2 losses. The one team that's kind of sneaking up on people is Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Bray, Prentice Hub, Dane Goodwin. Here they come. Duke will be playing at Notre Dame next Monday. Yeah.
Yep.
A week from tomorrow.
I'll be there.
Oh, wow. Good game. So Notre Dame is kind of a sleeper team there. Wake Forest is still 6-3. North Carolina is 4-3. I have no idea what to think about them. They haven't been a good team, but they have so much talent, and I'm relatively high on. I was high on Hubert Davis on getting the job there. I thought it was the pragmatic hire, but I don't know what to think of them. So I do think it's still there are, in my view, three top contenders: Miami, Florida State, and Duke. Notre Dame, Wake Forest, UNC. I'll still give them a pipe dream chance. I don't want to. I want to at least respect that program.
I think they have a better shot at the ACC tournament than the ACC outright.
That's a fair point because they have the talent. The talent can win out over a 3-4 day stretch.
Yeah, they can take 3 or 4 games, but I don't think over the course of the season.
But if I had to say, for the ACC regular season, I would have to say Duke should still be the favorite. I don't know what the line would be, but I think they should.
As you mentioned, they're projected to win the rest of their games.
Well, and an underrated aspect is they've kind of got their hardest matchups behind them.
North
Carolina. North Carolina can surprise.
North Carolina on the road is the hardest game.
Yeah.
The hardest road game of the season is always North Carolina.
Even North Carolina at home. I mean, they're not a bad team.
UNC could have 0 wins, and Duke.
Yeah.
And Duke could have 0 wins going into the game in Cameron, and it'll still be the other team's one of their toughest games. Yeah. 2 years ago, UNC stunk, and they played they looked like a clear tournament team for 39 minutes against Duke, and Trey Jones pulled off one of the most absurd, missed free throw buzzer beaters, and then went down more like, oh look, I have a layup here to win the game. So Duke needed all that just to win by 2 on the road against a terrible UNC team. So anything can happen. I'm not going to say Duke's winning by 20. I don't know. They match up pretty well with UNC, but we shall see. So that's all we have for today. We obviously you guys gotta head out. We gotta do some other stuff. So
do school.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for listening, and we will be live from Camden Indoor Stadium on Tuesday, I believe. Alex, you'll be there against Clemson on
should be a good game.
One of our associate editors, Matthew Hawkins, he will be in attendance as well. So be sure to tune in for all of our coverage there. And then Sasha, you're going to be traveling with Evan over to Louisville, right?
And then with
And then
Jake to Notre Dame, back-to-back road games for me.
Road games coming up, so we'll have our people on the ground reporting live from. So we're excited for that. So yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in, and guys, thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
All right, thanks everyone for listening. Happy Sunday.